Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Talk Openly. It's another Tuesday. The week has really flown by.
I can't
Um,
believe it, Jack.
I
We're
can't
already
believe it.
back here. We were
It's
just here.
and it's November 7th. It's like a whole weekend.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm Jack, and welcome. And for anyone who is watching, Daniel and I are students of Lama Jempa at Lions Roar. And so we're kind of peers with you along the path. And make sure and check info, check any info you hear with your teacher and the Dharma, because we're learning right along with you. So we will make mistakes. Um, but that's part of learning, right?
Heck yeah. That's what we're
Yeah.
here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And tonight we're talking about generosity. We're gonna get into that in the second half of the show, of the hour. And so we're kind of starting a series on the six paramitas, the six perfections. So we're starting with generosity. And so if it sounds nice to you, maybe making a little donation, even just like a few dollars to Lions Roar, if you're, a watcher of the show, that would be wonderful. So I just
Very
wanted to put that
generous.
plug in there first
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, you could do that on the lionsroardharmacenter.org website.
That's right. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. Um, yeah, well, how are you? I want to hear a little bit about your week. You're looks like you're back in the cottage. How are things? What's going on?
I am in the cottage. It's been an interesting week. I had this on Sunday. I was able to spend a lot of time at the Dharma Center. So it started like early in the morning, went into the afternoon, and it was just full. It was like one of those like mini retreat days, you know.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, that's really amazing. And then I got home, and I was like, oh man, I got like a headache. I don't feel so good. I'm gonna lay down. And then a little bit later, turns out I had a bit of a fever. And I was like, I'd come down with something. I thought, oh no, this is the beginning of something. I don't
Yeah,
know. And then anyway, was a bit feverish that night, but then like woke up the next day, everything seemed fine. But then slowly but surely, like it was this odd sort of like that whatever the heck it was, it kind of stuck around in my body for a couple of days now.
yeah.
It's still a little bit there. What's interesting is my daughter had gone through the same thing just a few days before. And so she was like, "Oh, don't worry, it's only lasts a few days."
That's funny. Yeah.
so
Do you
so
think it was
what
COVID or
no, it's
not sure if
not
you're
COVID. I'm not sure what it is. But it's not COVID. I'm no professional, but I didn't get tested, but it does not seem like COVID.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But anyway, so like that's going on. And then there's like the week also started with some sad news. One of our Sangha members is battling cancer, and it had progressed to like a more advanced stage. And tonight, before I came over here, there's actually like a small group of Sangha members who are doing like a medicine Buddha next door in the
mm,
temple for that. So it's been, more sort of like this awareness of the nature of what these bodies of ours, right? Both a little bit with my own, but also with friends, where it's like, oh, right. Yeah, these things truly are impermanent and they are ever changing. And, you know, um, the whole process of living out the human life definitely involves letting go of the body eventually. And that there's
yeah.
all this sort of trial and tribulation along the way. So a little bit of a heavy head, heavy heart in that area. But generally speaking, my practice is good, and I'm grateful for it because I'm not so sure, like I think that I wouldn't be able to take it all in stride. I think
Mm,
nearly as well without that. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. It's not like a super happy place, but
yeah.
yeah, I'm
It's a
alive. I'm here.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I will do some medicine Buddha practice tonight as well. Yeah, it really is amazing. Just how like my stream of consciousness gets so used to things just being a certain way,
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
something. jarring happens, and it's like, oh yeah, it actually is never that way. It just feels like it on an everyday basis. It can get so kind of normal, like, I go to work, I see the same people, I come home, I see the same
Yeah.
people, I feed the cat, etc. And it's like, someday the cat's not going to be alive and I won't be feeding the cat, and like my
Right.
friends, aren't going to be alive, or maybe I die first, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's all these, you know, those are like the big changes, of course, but there's all the little changes that are happening every day that are just under our awareness. Um, and if we were like kind of attuned to that, which I imagine a Buddha is, these kind of more abrupt, obvious changes, I imagine we'd be able to meet them with more compassion in a way, because um, when we're just present to it rather than kind of like being shocked and jolted, it's um I feel like, at least for me, the shock and joltedness is like um a little bit like my self-centeredness being,
Yeah.
shown its face or whatever. That like
For
I'm
sure.
going along in my kind of permanent self, and then feeling really upset when something changes. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny that you mentioned the shock part of it. Sue Forster did a sound meditation on Wednesday, and she was mentioning that if you feel jarred, if if you're sitting there in silence and all of a sudden the bell, there's some ringing of bells or some sounds, and you sort of like kind of snap into reality, then you weren't really present, right? You were like, that's a good indicator that you had gone off somewhere because you weren't here. If you were here, you were very present with it. The sound would just be a thing that arises, and you'd be aware of it, but it wouldn't be jarring, right? And I think that what you were saying is absolutely, I'm drawing a correlation, right, between the sound and just sort of life events. We'll be going along sort of like, at least for me, it kind of somewhat trance-like, right? And, oh, everything's fine, everybody loves me, everything's happy, everything's okay, and the world's going to be okay, and people are fine, and right, it's all kind of working, and then something kind of like pops in and slaps me, right? And then it's like, no, it's not like that. It isn't actually like that for a lot of people most of the time, or much of the time, right?
Yeah.
Including myself. So, like being a little bit more open and present with the way things actually are, and ever changing, the more that I can like not be up in my head about it philosophically, but actually living it, you know,
Right.
being with it in the day to day, the less jarring it'll be when those kinds of life events happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and even with it being less jarring, it's still sad. That's an important thing
Yeah,
to remember, is that like um excuse me, like Buddhist practice is not about removing the emotional response. Like yes, maybe we'll be more accepting and be like,
yeah,
yeah, that's that's reality, but will still have the emotional response. Um I think it was the last time, yeah, it was Alama gave a talk a couple weeks ago, and he was describing, when he learned that his teacher passed, where, he like fell to his knees, and and that it was like scary, the amount of emotion.
yeah.
Um, and so yeah, we're not training to remove emotion. In fact, we're training to be like brilliantly present to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, and that we can be in that place
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, exactly. It's not always going to be hunky dory things, like, and that's just part of how life is, right? So we can roll with it. But it's going to be different next week when we meet,
That's
right?
right.
Right? And then the following. So we have that to look forward to. Yeah. What about you, Jack? How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yeah. I yeah, I feel like kind of like the sugar that I ate an hour ago
Oh, all
hit a
right. I
little
got a
bit.
sugar
So
rush.
I'm a little bit in an opposite place in some ways. Like my energy is kind of like
Yeah.
a little bit up. Yeah, it's funny. I've been almost like intentionally using sugar as like a pick me up that's not caffeine, because I know caffeine will like take me way
Mm-hmm.
too long into the evening. So I've almost been like dosing with, with just like a little bit of sugar in the afternoon. So that's been kind of interesting to watch, is like, huh, I wonder how long I'm going to be doing this for. And is it just like kind of the short-term strategy that I was thinking it was, or am I going to get used to this, you
What's your
know?
sugar of choice?
Oh, anything that's freely available in the
Okay.
office. So
All
right
right.
now that, as the holidays are coming and, Halloween was just here, there's like sugar everywhere. And nurses are hilariously like the most sugar addicted people I've
Okay. Good to
like
know.
on on all three of the psych units that I work on, there is a literal drawer that you open up. It's filled with candy.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Is it the good
Crazy.
candy or is it like the,
No, there's some good candy in there.
oh
Yeah,
wow.
there's
All right.
like Starburst and
Ooh.
like yeah, like licorice, like little red vine ropes and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, it's pretty absurd.
that's funny. So you
But
can
yeah,
get your fix anytime.
I can get my fix anytime, and I need to be aware of that. Because I've been watching that kind of like attachment mind in other areas of my life too. Like, um, for example, I watched this show, The Great British Baking Show on Netflix, and it's pretty much the only TV that I watch in the week. And so like it'll come out with a new episode on Friday. And then over the course of the week, I'll watch like 20-minute segments of the hour-long episode like throughout the week.
Yeah.
And there's this part of my mind that's kind of like really savoring, like, oh, that's going to be the time where I can just shut my brain off, you know? Um, and I noticed that there's like this kind of like feeling of, oh, if I don't get it, then I'm kind of annoyed or a little bit irritated. Like it's kind of like this little dessert that I get, a few times a week. Um, and so I've just been kind of noticing that, and like no judgment, right? But just like, okay, what if tonight I just don't? Like how about instead of the
Mm,
20 minutes of the show, like just go to bed,
right.
like just go to bed.
Yeah.
Um, and what's happened is that I'm fine, and I and I think actually I might sleep better because I don't have a screen in front of me before I go to bed. But yeah, it's just kind of fun to watch that it's like, oh, that's what attachment is. And that
Yeah.
also it's like this thing that when I do get it, um it doesn't necessarily make me happy. It's just kind of
Mm,
like where my brain kind of shuts off, um, and even maybe disrupts my sleep. So like there's how strange that I'm going after that thing that is not necessarily helping me, right? Like I think
yeah.
that's the attachment mind, in a lot of ways.
And it's
So
interesting too how it's just I mean, like watching the same show and getting that little period of sort of disconnect or whatever you want to call it, that's just like a habit pattern that you've created.
yeah,
And that somehow that pattern becomes so ingrained, so important that when it's absent, it's missed. Like you can really, you're like, oh, but I need to fill that with something too, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, our
It's
brains are
fascinating to watch
fascinating.
that.
Yes.
The attachments are not always these big things, right? That a lot of times it's just are the usual. That's what kind of like we
Yeah.
were talking about at the outset, right? Like it's easy to get into sort of like a bit of a trance-like state in the sense of like maintaining the regular rhythm of our habit patterns. Like, well, I watched this show at this particular time. Right after, at 2 o'clock, I go into the nurse's drawer and get this particular candy, like that kind of, like this patterning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's fascinating is when you break it, you realize when you break the pattern, that is, you realize how unnecessary it was to begin with, right? Like you were saying, like it doesn't have to be that way. I remember when I first got into like doing fasting,
Mhm.
I I was blown away how my mind, like this current, had developed around food rhythm, right?
Right.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all of this stuff, right? And then when I stopped doing it, I was like, my mind was like, "Whoa, you could do that? You could just
Yeah.
you could just like choose not to eat breakfast. Oh my gosh, right? What do you know?" And then there's this immediate sort of looking around, like, well, what am I supposed to do now then? Wait,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. And especially with food, right? Like all the time that we spend on thinking about food, making food, eating it, and cleaning up after it,
yeah,
it's so much time. Like,
yeah. Exactly.
incredible.
What are you gonna do with all that time,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
think it's fun.
know.
It's good to experiment with these things.
Yes. Yes.
Turning off you know, in some cases I actually experiment sometimes a little bit the other way. So I for whatever reason TV's not been a thing for me for quite a long time, but I will sometimes do the opposite where I'm like, I'm gonna watch a movie. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna see what that's like. I'm gonna sit on the couch and I'm gonna watch a movie. Like, yeah. And oftentimes I'm kind of like, not really my thing, still not my thing, but it's
Yeah.
a good exercise.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like I think it would be a good exercise for me to have to watch like a Marvel movie or something, like a
Yes.
movie that's like 3 hours long and about superheroes. And like, no, I don't want to like, crap on anyone who does like that, but for some reason, like the thought of having to sit through one of those movies like makes me itch. Like it makes me so nervous. I don't know why. It's just like, yeah, my eyes like bleed, but something about it. And it's so funny. Maybe I need to like try that because I'm kind of a masochist sometimes where I'm like, I got to do the hard thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes we have to challenge ourselves. I felt that way, not to get too far off here, but I
Uh-huh.
used to feel that way about like baseball, right? Like I
Yeah.
really did not, I still have feelings about it. It's not my favorite sport. But I
Yeah.
do remember, like, so being dragged into like what a River Cats game as in Sacramento, that's the local team, and being like I had all this resistance and it was really unpleasant. Like I was wasting all this time sitting there with this stupid sport, da 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 da, right? And it was really kind of negative. And then on a totally different, different time, I was like, no, I'm gonna intentionally go there and have a good time. Like let's just lean into it. And
Yeah.
it turned out like, you can actually kind of enjoy pretty much any of those experiences,
Yeah.
right? There's a way to do it. If you could just relax into it, maybe there's some aspect to a Marvel movie, with superheroes that you can be like, yeah, actually, I truly appreciated that.
Yeah. Maybe
Maybe,
it makes me
maybe.
nervous.
All right, report back.
No. I refuse.
Your challenge, should you choose to accept it.
Yeah. All right. We'll see if I've watched a movie in the next week. I'll
Yep.
tell you. Yeah.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of challenges, I'd love to do some mind training. You got some
Yeah.
Lojong?
I got some Lojong geared up here. Let me get my screen shared. All right. So for those who are just listening, we're on the lionsroar.dharmacenter.org website, and we are looking at the handy dandy random Lojong slogan generator tool. So we're going to click this button, get a random Lojong slogan.
All right. So this is number 4. I don't think we've gotten number 4 yet. It says even the remedy is free to self-liberate. That's a lot. There's a lot in that statement. So let's read what John, let's see. There's 2 things here. I'll start with point. Sorry, I'm all over the place. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to figure out where I am on these things. Um, so there's these 2 divisions of 9 instructions of Lojong. Is that correct? It's kind of what I'm
Yeah,
seeing.
it's a little hard to figure out
Yeah.
where to start it, but
And number 1 is cultivating absolute bodhicitta, which consists of 5 instructions. And even the remedy is free to self-liberate belongs to the first division of cultivating absolute bodhicitta. And then the second is cultivating relative bodhicitta, which consists of 4 instructions. The remedy here refers to the previous 2 points. Regard all phenomena as dreams and examine the nature of unborn awareness. These analyses are the remedy. These also must not be reified and must be let go. So Jamyang Cultural wrote, when we look at the presence of the remedy itself, these thoughts about the absence of true existence, there is nothing for the mind to refer to, and they subside naturally on their own. And that was from The Great Path of Awakening. I
So
This one is
yeah,
beyond, is beyond my current level of understanding, Daniel.
yeah,
I mean,
same.
there's like things that I could, be like, oh, I get that here, but yeah, anything with absolute bodhicitta, I'm still kind of, obviously, yes,
Sure.
very learned.
Right. I think, it's interesting. My take on it, if I could, I definitely don't think I understand it, but my take on it is that art, like, so in the sense of trying to that even sort of like the if we get into sort of more of the uh, uh dang it, now words really are failing me. This
I
is
think the random Lojong slogan generator wanted to give us a hard one on a night when like you're kind
right,
of down and I'm like way too up. And
right.
it's like let's throw a wrench in it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know that I'm going to be able to. I want to be able to articulate it, but it's I my sense is so the idea that we don't want to get wrapped up even in the sort of, because we never quite touch the ultimate, right? There are these little perhaps glimpses or ways of sort of dealing with thoughts arising, for example, in meditation, right? And where everything kind of quiets down, and then there's sort of this examination of the nature of unborn awareness, so to speak. But even there's not thought, like the tendency is to sort of latch on and to sort of, as it says, to reify it, right? To make
Yeah.
it real somehow. But then there's nothing
That
there.
experience of examining emptiness in kind of like meditation, that also that um is empty.
That
Um
right, exactly.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Okay.
I
Yes.
think that's what it's trying to
I
say.
think I think that might be the closest we're gonna get.
Whew,
Ooh,
I'm sweating over here, Jack. I'm like, I feel like we got a pop quiz or
I
something.
know. Oh my gosh. There was literally a few months ago that I was with a friend in the community, and she randomly asked me like, "Oh, do you know what the 6 paramitas are?" And I was like,
Oh,
"I mean, like, yeah, but like not like right now."
right.
Because it was totally like, when you see someone or like, have a conversation with someone
Yeah,
that's not in the context that you like see them in. Like I see her as like, she's my social justice reading group buddy. And then she was bringing up the Buddhist stuff. And I was just like, whoa, my brain is not handling
yeah.
this well.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Yeah,
so
for
funny.
sure.
And that's such like a basic foundational Buddhist thing that I was like, I should know this. I should be able to just like say this. But anyways, yeah.
I feel that way with a lot of the foundational stuff, actually, right? Where
Yeah,
like I might get lost in a bit more of the esoteric things or some particular reading or commentary or whatever. But that in many cases, that's part of the reason I think that we're doing this series on the paramitas, right? Is like we have to go over it again. At least for me, repetition is the key to, is the sort of needed for emphasis, right? Like I,
absolutely.
like I'm not going to get it unless it gets like drilled into me, and even then I'm like,
Over and over and over again. And yeah, I think for lifetimes, right? Hopefully we can do it in this lifetime.
yeah,
That's possible. But our mind streams have been so conditioned by habit, as we were talking about. And
yeah.
so trying to turn that ship around, it's we really, really have to be consistent. And yeah, like you said, just repeating over and over again. Um,
Maybe our little like misperceived selves, our egos are somehow threatened by all of this and are actually sort of putting up blockers, right? No, you're not going to remember this. You're not going to understand this. You're not going to get it. I'm going to make sure you forget about this as quickly as possible because it's a threat to me.
well, there's something to that, in that I think when that happens for me, when I get like thought blocked when I'm trying to recall something, like just really quickly, it is ego based, right? Because I'm like, I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to produce the information, and like someone's going
Yeah,
to think I'm dumb, right? So there
right.
is like, there's ego there instead of
Totally. Yeah.
you
And
know
then later when you're just like relaxing and there's nobody there, then all of a sudden it all comes to mind, right?
Yeah, for sure. So who is this amazing deity here?
That's
Um,
Yama with consort. So
Wonderful.
the Lord of Death, right?
Yeah, there's a lot happening here.
There's a lot going on
Yeah,
there.
definitely get a chance to go on the slogan generator, because there's every single slogan has an amazing piece of art, and it's not necessarily connected to the slogan, but just here to kind of inspire us.
Yep.
So yeah, check it out.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks. That was challenging.
That was challenging. I know. I feel like I gotta brush up a little bit before we do these shows. I gotta like read my read my lojong. Um, but yeah, great. I'm excited to be doing this series on the six paramitas, the six perfections. Um,
Yep.
and we're starting off with generosity, um, which on the surface sounds pretty simple, like it's just giving, right?
Yep.
But there's so much underneath that, that is very hard to do, and with a clear a clear mind and clear
Right.
motivation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, the motivation part of it seems to be seems to be key,
Yeah.
right? And that we first have to tackle some of our just our own sort of our own internal states, right? We have to tackle our own issues, our own sort of our intention, our motivation around giving before we can even get to real giving.
Yeah, I'm curious, what are some of your motivations around generosity? Like what things have motivated you to be generous?
Are you talking about like on the good side or the bad side?
You choose.
Okay, I'll start with some of the more sort of the way that I would give sort of pre-dharma, right? Or even still. I think sometimes giving with sort of like a showing off, like, oh, I have something, like, so whether like let's say it's material things or knowledge, right? Something like that. That's sort of like almost like a gloating, like, oh, I've got something, you don't. And so like it feels sort of like satisfying to my ego, right? To sort of
Mm,
be in that position to give to somebody who doesn't have, right? I have, you don't have, and
kind
me
of like a
giving.
pity.
Yeah, like there's something on in that sort of on that end of the spectrum that's going on there. I don't think that a lot of the transactional type of giving hasn't, that's not really my thing, but I do get the sense that there are these other yeah, like giving time, for example, and maybe expecting another person to reciprocate,
Hmm.
right? And like that kind of thing, whereas maybe not like such a one-to-one transactional model of giving, I'll give you this, you give me that, but rather that someone would reciprocate in kind, like I'm doing unto you so that you will do unto me, sort of
Right,
thing.
right.
Yeah. I,
Yeah,
I think that's like sort of like classical giving for me.
it makes sense to me that both of those resonate with me. I think especially the kind of expecting something in return.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to help you move, you're definitely going to pay me back in some way. Like I want to
Some way,
Yeah.
right? Like yeah, maybe not even in kind, but like you will be there for me when I need you, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Which it's almost like so that just sounds like the way that things are, right? Because it's the way that we just do things
Yeah,
in our culture, and I think in our minds is that like we really do just expect that that's how things work.
right.
And
I
I think
do find myself challenged around expectations of giving. That's
mm,
that's one area where I'm terribly challenged. I have been in the past and still am. Like I like to give when I feel like giving, but
uh-huh.
if I'm expected to give, so I, holidays, birthdays, that kind of thing, like I I'm like I feel if so it's so forced,
Uh-huh.
and so inauthentic and so like opposite of what I feel giving should be about, like that I still I'm really
Yeah.
challenged by that, and I think that one area where I could bring some generosity to that is to let go of some of my uh issues with those expectations and just lean into it and be like, oh, just kind of like the baseball game, right, or the
Yeah.
Marvel movie, and be like, yeah, okay, Daniel, so you've got some problems around people expecting gifts or giving during certain periods or whatever. Like, okay, we'll give that up, right?
Yeah. No, I like that you could be generous with that state of mind.
Yeah, but I
By
totally
giving
am
it away.
challenged by it still. I'm gonna try it
Yeah.
this. I'm working on that for this upcoming holiday season. That's my personal challenge.
Yeah. And I imagine it doesn't mean you have to go full kind of the other side of the, you know, pendulum.
Oh, I've
Um,
done that. That doesn't work, Jack.
so
No,
you
I've
have,
swung
are
both
you
ways. I have
over?
not found the middle path on this. No.
Got it. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that bringing a truly, as we'll discuss, generosity, a truly generous spirit to this will naturally lead itself to avoid either of those extremes, like basically not giving or giving too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, then what do we think a middle way generosity is? Like, what is the generosity that, a Buddha shows us? Um, and I know it's going to be like kind of different for for us being on the path and not being a Buddha, but like how do we approach that kind of perfect generosity um and find actually kind of engage with it in our lives?
Well, I mean, I can't. The more that I've thought about this, Jack, the more that I realize that this entire path and what we're on about, all of our Dharma practice, all of our spiritual practice, is needs to be done with this generous spirit, right? Ultimately, if our goal is truly to awaken for the benefit of all beings, right, and to be there to help all sentient beings, that's a pretty tall order, right? It's going to require a lot of us, and especially if we're going to let go of our own self clinging, right? And we know that that's what this is about. That means that we actually have to give up sort of like the ultimate sacrifice, right? And we can do little baby steps along the way, right? Like we could totally baby step our way into ultimately giving up, something that's so cherished, our little notion of ourselves that we cling to. I don't think we have to jump to that, but I think that the reason why this is a paramita is because it's going to be pushing us in the right direction. And I think that starting by really truly, like, we can start with sort of a meditative mindset and really examine like what we're doing, right? Why am I giving? What is this all about, right? I think that we have to sort of check out our intentions, our motivations first, right? And if it is being done because of jealousy or anger or pride, or because we're materialistic and want something out of it, yeah, not that that's necessarily a bad thing. That's just how we're conditioned to see things, but we don't have to act on those
Yeah.
motivations.
I really like that idea that, generosity is the path, that
Yeah.
is what we're being called to do is giving ourselves, to all of us. That is, the bodhisattva path. Um, yeah, it's really inspiring. And I do a one of the practices that I do every day. Part of it is kind of visualizing giving away everything that I own, or think that I own, any wealth that I have. It even says like my land, and I imagine that kind of means like almost like my affiliation with like nation or tribe or country people, that kind of thing. Giving up everything, that kind of creates an identity for me. In addition to, and this one for some reason is the hardest for me, is imagining giving up, um, or not giving up, but just offering, right? Offering, because giving up, that is
Yeah.
important language, right?
You lose if you give up, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So offering the good qualities and good karma that I've accumulated over lifetimes. And that one is like the one where I get this little kind of twinge of like, I don't know, do I really
You
want to
want to
give
give
that
this
up?
up? Yeah, right.
you know? um, so I find that really interesting. And so just to practice in my mind, to practice giving things away, um, is really valuable, but it's hard. How funny.
Isn't it funny? Okay. So I totally get it. Maybe, you've worked really hard for some material possession and maybe you don't want to give that away. I kind of get it. But what I find fascinating is what you just pointed to. And I think we may have talked about this in the past, which is even in our imaginary worlds, why is it that even we're not even talking about anything real? We're just talking
Yeah.
about imagined worlds, right? Or why is it like that we even therein we find it difficult to give or offer up whatever we just imagined, right? They really,
Yeah.
it's just dreamlike, it's just mental clouds, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so these processes, the offerings, right? That like we're called to visualize ahead of time, right? Or to visualize as part of the process. And there's something really beautiful like about whatever it is that we're imagining that's so precious. It can be any number of different things, right? It could be
Yeah.
the entire universe. It could be just something very precious. It could be our practice, the merit from our practice, right? And just like there's something really beautiful about just perceiving that, like to visualize it, just to be with the beauty and goodness of the thing that we're wishing to offer up. And then there's this sort of moment where you're offering it and you're like,
We're like, yeah. Yeah. And that is like such a good moment of like, okay, there it is. There, like there's ego, like right there showing its face. And what I feel like I need to do at that time is really remind myself that nothing that I've gained or accumulated is mine. Like I don't own it. Like
right,
anything that has come to me is because of like everything else. Like I'm made up of all these causes and conditions. And yes, my actions, but I don't own any of it. And so to say like I'm offering this, it doesn't mean that I'm, yeah, giving up something, because it's something that came my way through various causes, interdependent causes and conditions.
well, I'm so glad that you brought this up. So, I did you get a chance ever to did you hear Matthew's talk on generosity?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was one of the best talks that I've heard a student give, like ever, hands down. It was so fantastic. But one of the points that he makes is how this is really something that helps us to perceive impermanence, right, or to understand impermanence. Is exactly what you're talking about, which is it's all been in flux. It's all been moving. We ourselves and everything that we have, it's all something else had to give it up, or it offered to us in order for us to be this way. Everything is constantly in a state of flux. There's all this transaction that's happening throughout the energetic sort of transactions that are happening throughout the universe at all levels, at all times, and that we're just a part of that process, right? And like going with the flow and offering up, letting it go, right? It's bound to, not that that particular thing is going to come back around or even is the reason why we do it, but our lives are going to continue to exist in this sort of way where things are going to come to us and we're going to have to let things go.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And, I think not just in Buddhism, but there's also discussions in Christianity about that very thing too, is that, what we give away, we're going to receive back, will be provided for. And, yeah, it's really funny when Matthew gave that talk, I actually asked him a question. And my question was that, like, should I, like, if I'm in the state of mind that I don't want to give, but I give anyway because I know it's the right thing to do, like, should I do that? Like, should I do that? And uh he kind of explored that it's like, well, you kind of got to feel it out. You'll know what's right. And I'm still sitting with that. Like, what is the right thing to do with that when we're in that kind of miserly state of mind? Is it better for me to counteract that and say, like, okay, screw that, like, miserly mind, I'm gonna give, or should I kind of reflect and hold back for a while until I'm in a place where I'm less miserly? And as I'm talking, I think I realize what the answer is for me is that, like, I actually do have to give. And part of that, like, me actually being able to get to a place where I spontaneously feel generous and I want to give requires me to counteract that mind of miserliness in the moment and say, you're wrong. and then practice the act of giving, because the more you do it, the more, you'll experience the effects and notice what that's actually doing.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of like what he's saying. There's nothing necessarily wrong, even if you do end up holding back.
Yeah.
Just seeing like, oh, I'm not ready. I'm not willing actually to offer that up yet. I am still attached to that, or what, like I think bringing some mindfulness to that practice.
Sure.
Being a little bit gentle. Otherwise, there has to be some balance there, right?
I know I am hard on myself, but it's kind of in a fun way. Like, I wouldn't force myself to, like, give away my rain jacket when it's pouring down rain. Like, I'm not, no, like, that's not wise, right? Like, you don't want to get sick. Um but yeah, giving away, like, my last dollar in cash, like, that's, yeah, just Jack, just give it away. Like, not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
our funny little miserly minds.
Yeah, but what I find so fascinating about it is what we're miserly about, what we're holding on to that we don't want to offer up, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
we
What are
don't
some
want to
of
let go.
yours?
I think that it's weird because there's resistance to offering up some of my own obstacles, so to speak, right? Like,
Ooh,
um, yeah, like so I was reflecting on this the other day about like about the relationship between like anger and developing patience, right? Like I could offer up my anger in a situation, right? And let go of it to give it
see
away
what you're saying.
in a certain way, right? So let's imagine that we're in this is a hypothetical situation.
Uh-huh.
Let's imagine that we're in a group situation and one person is sort of going on and on, talking and talking and carrying on about something that the rest of the group clearly is not interested in. And there's this sort of exasperation. You can feel the whole group being like, ugh. Well, so that kind of energy builds up for me, right? And I can feel like I can feel myself getting like impatient and starting to get irritated. And then I start to like, well, that person is like an idiot. And, like that kind of stuff starts
Yeah.
happening. But if I noticed, like in that moment, that an opportunity, if I noticed that I could actually give it away, I could offer that up And if I were to do that, if I were to just say, hey, let that go, right? Let's give that anger, let's give that frustration, that irritation to this person, whoever they are. Then, I can see my own sort of my clinginess, right? Like,
Mm,
if am I going to give it up? Am I gonna hold on to it a little bit more?
yeah.
Right. And it's quite precious because when we give, we receive. So in that case, if I were to give away like my anger and frustration, I might receive some patience, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's such a good one too, because like I definitely feel angry with people who maybe aren't like aware of their
Right.
surroundings in certain ways,
Right.
like it
Yeah.
just feels like a come on. I also I'm working on giving up anger and the need to be right.
Yes.
Like that
Oh,
one
big one.
is so huge for me, and like it really comes up in my relationship where like there's so many opportunities for me to give up the need to be right. And one happened tonight at the dinner table. I was with my partner, and and he was mentioning I'm already getting mad. Like he was mentioning like maybe I should like change up my breakfast because I eat the same breakfast every day, and maybe that's like causing a food allergy. And I just like felt myself being like all the things I wanted to say were like, you don't have any evidence. Like there's no like, have you looked up the scientific
Cite
evidence?
your sources.
Like, thank you. Yes, that's where I go, is like, you need to cite your sources, like show me. Like anyways, so I initially, I'm gonna say I gave in to my irritability, and I didn't, generously give up. But at first I did practice that. I was like, you know what, Jack, like this is not something that you don't need to get into this. And I felt that as like kind of like it was generous to just say, I'm just gonna be here with my partner rather than like kind of, I don't know, ruffle things up for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I eventually did decide to look on Google and look up on my phone. Can't it was just, and that is it is this like mind of like, okay, and then it starts to turn, right? Like turn away from just giving up. Where it's like then I'm like, no, I can't. I'm nope, not giving it up. So I'm really working at that one's very present for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there were a couple of different quotes that I was reflecting on as in thinking about this topic of generosity that's directly related to what you just said.
Hmm.
One of them was a quote actually that was in that Matthew gave. It was something that Lama said, and that he had noted. He said, Lama says that probably the best gift that we can give away is our own head trips, right? So that was, like, yeah, right, exactly. Because if I can get over myself, if I get over my frustration, my anger, my irritability, my need to be right, if I could get over that stuff, that's an amazing gift to give give everybody and ourselves, right? Like, what a beautiful gift. And then I was reflecting on that and kind of comparing and contrasting it to something that Thich Nhat Hanh had said. In Thich Nhat Hanh, it said, the most precious gift we can offer anyone is our attention. When mindfulness embraces those we love, they will bloom like flowers. But
Hmm.
I think that they're actually in a weird sort of way saying the same thing, right?
Yeah, very much
Lama's
so.
saying probably the best gift that we can give away is our own head trip. Well, by giving away our head trip, we're allowing our attention to unfold, right?
Yeah.
We're so our awareness becomes like like a big old hug that can embrace the other people, right? Like, because we're not
Yeah.
so caught up. Right? So you're sitting there in the group and this person yammering on or whatever, and you're all up in here, yeah, you got all kinds of stuff going on. If you could drop all of that and bring your awareness, right, and bring your presence and just, like actually give your attention to that person, that's a beautiful gift,
Yeah.
right? And it
Absolutely.
gives you something in return.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking when you were reading those quotes, like, what if I were to, really tune in my attention in those moments with my partner. And really, what is he saying is that, like, I really want you to be healthy. I want your body to be healthy and happy. Like, let's brainstorm. What are some things that, like,
Yeah,
that's what happens when we turn on our awareness, is that we get to see more perspectives. We get to see, like, okay, what else could be happening here, rather than the story that I tell myself I know must be true. There's, yeah, there's just so much
yeah,
more that the experience can offer us when we're open to it.
exactly
And how
that.
isn't that lovely that, like, when we're generous with giving up, then we receive so much back in the way of, like, wow, how fascinating this world is and the people around me are. Like,
Yeah,
there's so much to engage with. How generous the world
exactly.
is. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes to giving, obviously there's so many different ways, so many different things that can be given, all of that. But I think that what we're trying to develop here is this generous spirit, which is a deep attitudinal shift in the way that we relate to ourselves and relate to other people. And it's this warm heart, this kind, compassionate, warm heart. And then whatever you give, if you've developed a little a little of that, right? Then when you give, like, then you're really truly actually giving. Like, it's a paramita, right? That's not a
Mhm.
it's not a not a an obstacle in and of itself for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh man. Yeah. And when I imagine people in my life who are very, very generous, like, um, I think of our teachers, right? Like, how incredible it is, like, that there's people who are just 100% devoting their life to teaching us how to be free. Like, that is such mind-blowing generosity. I think about Lama, who works like more than full time as a therapist, like doing Dharma stuff in his therapy, of course, and then devotes like all the rest of his time to the temple. Um, like, that blows my mind. Um, that kind of generosity where it's his life and our teachers' lives are not about their, like, their little me self, it's about all of us. And I just find that, like, so inspiring when I really sit with that and
right.
think about, like, how much love is behind that, devotion to teaching us. It really inspires me.
Yeah, because in many ways that's giving away, material, it's giving away energy, right? So Lama offers up, I remember there's like essentially what, like three classes of giving away from sort of a traditional point of view. There's the material, energetic, like our time and our attention and things like that. And then you know the dharma, which if you're
Mhm.
a teacher, then that's something that you can do. In our case, we can maybe offer up our dharma practice, um but in that case he's actually he's offering up all of it, right? Because the time and effort that he spends with us is also an opportunity cost, right? He could be using that to enrich himself in a very limited way, but instead, like, every minute, every hour, everything is toward, is trying to help other people. And without I mean, from what I could tell, like, I'm not sure that, like, I don't know what he's getting in return,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you're there, it's definitely not transactional. There's no way, because it seems like a decent amount of flack comes his way.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
And
for
it's
sure.
not always appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do imagine that there's when someone reaches that level of understanding, there's just so much love that, like, that is kind of, if there is, a way that they're receiving something back, like the experience of loving people so much, I imagine is quite profound.
Yeah.
Because I think our teachers just really truly love us, like very deeply, so deeply, and you know, uh unconditionally, right? Um and so that's a real I imagine that's a really nice feeling to have.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, it must be nice to be that liberated because I certainly still feel bound by those things that I'm not quite willing to generously give up just yet.
Oh man,
Right? That is our
I'm ready.
bondage in
I
some
want to be
sense.
free from that stuff. I really
Right?
do.
But
I
you
want
don't
to
want to
be
give it
free.
away.
I know, at the same, isn't that so crazy? It's totally crazy. That it's like, okay, we're starting to see and uncover those things that are really keeping us bound to this existence that is not giving us much. And we're starting to see, okay, here's how we can liberate. One of the ways is through generosity, through
Right.
giving up, through starting to let go of some of these patterns. And yet when we see that, it's like, nope,
Yeah. No,
like, wait,
I'm not ready
yeah,
to give that up just yet.
yeah, yeah. But we're on the path. How beautiful, that like we can be reflecting on these things. And of course we have not perfected generosity yet, but we're working on it. We're
Got a little ways to go, Jack. Yeah, yeah.
Me
I've
too.
there are a lot of things I'm not yet ready to offer up.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Same. Yeah.
Like it is a funny sort of thing to think about that on the one hand, yes, I want to be liberated, right? Yes, absolutely. But then like when the opportunity comes to let go of some of the shackles, right? And to sort of cast off the net, so to speak, like, oh no, no, I'm so identified with that. That's mine. I want to hold on to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Freedom is a little bit scary.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Well, Daniel, uh, this has been I've really, really benefited from talking about this. I'm excited. I'm excited to keep learning. I
Yeah,
feel
heck
really good.
yeah. This is good stuff. It always
Yeah.
tweaks my brain a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it's always, like in this case, especially, I feel like there's this great opportunity for sort of self-reflection, right? And be like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Like there's just like, oh, right, that's true. That's true about like I do want to practice generosity. What does that really actually mean?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
This is gonna be
Great
fun
stuff.
to study the rest or talk about the rest of the paramitas with you.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to it. And for folks who are listening, if you feel called to, please consider donating to Lions Roar. We have Donna. It keeps our temple going, and our teacher, being able to teach, and the lights on and all the things. So Lions Roar Dharma Center .org is where you can go to donate. So please consider doing that. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. And I
All
think, is it
right.
discipline for next week?
Is
Is
it
that the next?
discipline? Oh, I don't
I
know.
don't know, actually. Okay.
We'll
We'll find
see.
out
No,
next
wait,
week.
hey, recite all six of them right now on the spot.
No, you're mean. In 5 weeks, I'll be able to.
Okay, perfect. That sounds good. It's been a pleasure, Jack. Thank you so much.
Same to you, Daniel. All right.
Bye,
Take care.
everybody.